o'clock Eastern time. I think we should start on time since this is being recorded. People who come late will have a chance to see the beginning later if they want to. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2020 IEEE Computer Society Presidential Election Town Hall. Our two candidates are William Gropp and Nita Patel, and I'm Fred Douglas. I'm the election chair for 2020 and a member of the Computer Society Board of Governors. So the town hall will have the following format. I'll give my opening remarks now, and then the Bill and the Nita will have 5 minutes each. They'll have 1 minute to respond to each other's statements. Then we're going to have a number of questions. Two of them were posed to them in advance, and they have prepared remarks for those. Others were posed by the election committee and selected from social media. We have a few of those in the deck, but people will be invited to enter their questions at any time in the Q&A section, and we can look at those and decide to use some of those instead. In addition, you'll have the opportunity to vote on each other's questions. So if you want to upvote something, that will tell us which things people are giving priority to. After a number of questions, we'll go to closing statements from the candidates. Bill was selected by random selection earlier this week for the opening statement. So Nita will give the first closing statement, then Bill. They'll have 3 minutes each. And they also have 1 additional minute in that time period for any additional comments to follow up on other things. At the end, I'll give some quick closing remarks. So with that, I'd like to welcome Bill to, we have some logistics first. I went off script. So the logistics I mentioned before Q&A, you're muted. There's no ability to chat, but you can use the Q&A function. The raise hand is disabled as well. You can vote on the Q&A questions, as I said before. Each candidate will be asked the same questions. You can direct them at one person if you like, but they're both going to get the chance to respond to them. And finally, this is being recorded. It will be uploaded on this Computer Society website within a week. Anybody who joined late can see the earlier remarks or catch up at any time. So I'll turn it over to Bill.
And I'll have to. Thank you, Fred. And I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to talk with the membership of the Computer Society, those of you who join now, and those that I hope are taking advantage of the fact that we're recording this. Go to the next slide. So, why am I doing this? We need to chart a future for the Computer Society. Our field is one of the ones that is most central to the 21st century. It touches everything, engineering and science research, the academia, its impact on the economy, leisure, recreation, and of course, response to pandemics and crises. And that impact comes with greater complexity and interdisciplinarity. It's harder and harder to sit in a room, think up some new idea that nobody thought of before in computing, and have a big impact. More and more, we need to be working together to do that. And then computer science is also a growing field. Those of us in academia know that one of our biggest challenges is dealing with an explosive growth in the number of students. We've become a major of choice. And on top of this, the field is in transition. Dennard scaling into the, at least 15 years ago, we're talking about post-Moore's law, for whatever you might think that Moore's law means. The rise of machine learning and its impact on artificial intelligence, the flowering of quantum information sciences and quantum computing, the spread of CS to other disciplines in a more formal way through things we often call CS plus X. This is a big transition. Things are changing very quickly, and it's hard for anyone to stay current on all of this. In this, the Computer Society is recognized as one of the leading professional societies in computing. And we're making a big contribution to this future. We have many successful products in our conferences, publications, and some smaller activities. These are all things that we need to be looking at as we think in the future of our profession. So next slide. Yes, thank you. So those are a lot of the opportunities and a lot of the excitement about being in this field. The Computer Society does face some challenges. Our membership has been declining, especially among early to mid-career. It's been a challenge to attract members from both industry and academia. And the membership, just like the field, has been struggling to address issues of equity, diversity, and inclusion. We have a real challenge in changes in publication models. The financial implications of open access are serious. There are also more changes to publications reviewing. We see this in sort of crowdsourced models. And we see also changes in conferences. Virtual and hybrid conferences are now the norm. This sort of town hall is now the kind of thing that we do for our day jobs. And open access is also coming to conference proceedings. We have an interesting relationship with our partners and competitors. And of course, the pandemic has changed everything. It's had a huge effect on people, challenges for operations, positive way to force experiments in virtual events, and more. Next slide. I'm not going to go through this, but I have a broad background, degrees in math, physics, and computer science. I've worked both in academia and, if you consider national labs industry, I have that experience as well. And I've been working with the Computer Society in both as a conference organizer for many years and as on the board of governors since 2017, and as the vice president for conference and technical activities last year and this year. Next slide. I want to finish up with my vision here for the Computer Society. So when I think about the Computer Society, I think that it is first and foremost just that. It is a society. And I think that that's what we need to build on. We need to build on those communities and connections that make up the society and make them strong, more inclusive, more responsive, and more dynamic. As president, and I have three main goals. One is to build on our connections. We need to better connect those in our profession to the communities and researchers and practitioners in our society. We need to strengthen those bonds among us. We need to better communicate. I see this in my day job, and I see this in working with the Computer Society. There is much that is going on, but we do not communicate it well with our stakeholders. And this, again, needs to be done, something that is done not as a top-down activity, but as a bottom-up activity. And finally, I don't have the answers. Nobody does. We need to explore and adapt and take advantage of the expertise we all have. So with that, let me just say I look forward to serving you as president of the Computer Society. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So, Nita, you have 1 minute for any comments you might want to make in response to Bill's opening statement, and then 5 minutes for your own opening statement.
Thanks, Fred. I'll just include my comments in my intro. Again, as Bill said, thank you for joining us today and for being interested and to hear our ideas. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Let me begin with a little bit about me. Next slide, please. I am the Senior Director of Engineering at L3 Harris Technologies, where I lead multidisciplinary teams in designing innovative research around, specifically for my division, is night vision capability and electro-optic systems. Even though L3 has a huge expanse of technology, my area is more signal image processing for embedded platforms. In my role, I'm bringing together a wide range of disciplines to make sure we are designing solutions for our customers. And over the last 25 years, starting as a student member at Southern Methodist University, I was a chapter leader there, and ever since then, I've been a volunteer for IEEE in many different roles. It's funny, similar to Bill, I also have a math degree, I have a computer engineering degree, but I swapped his physics for my electrical engineering. So we're pretty similar in that sense, but slightly different. And mixed in that hardware software interface for my career since then. I've been on the Computer Society board, first vice president. Currently, I'm a director on the IEEE Foundation board and a member of the Industry Engagement Committee at IEEE. I also volunteer within my section in New Hampshire, as well as I'm a mentor for many of the Women in Engineering Summits around the world. As I said, I've served on the Computer Society board. I had founded and started the Women in Engineering Leadership Conference and really revamped that program when I was international chair. I've also served an Ada Kapanu board, IEEE USA board, so I've seen many different aspects of the IEEE and how the Computer Society interacts with the IEEE. Outside of work in IEEE, I'm a volunteer for Toastmasters International, which is an organization focused around developing leadership and communication skills. I serve as many club coach and area director. And my husband and I are avid readers, as you can see from the books. Bill and I didn't really tag team here, but we both apparently like to read, and we have quite a bit of books in both of our places. So reading is fun. And then the other thing we do for fun is chess. I'm a recognized national tournament director, senior tournament director, and we play quite a bit of chess. Not ever with my husband, but with other people. And as we go into the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about where I'd like to focus on for the Computer Society. I think I bring a really broad breadth of IEEE experience as well as a mix of technology experience. And I want to focus on 4 areas. One is nurturing ideas. As Bill said, none of us have all the answers, but collectively, I think we have most of the answers. And I would like to take my leadership skills to help us nurture and foster and sort of percolate up to things that will add value to our industry members and our industry organizations. How do we bring industry tighter with academia and government entities, and through our publications, our conferences, what pieces do we need to mesh? And one area of focus will be to nurture those ideas to make that happen. Another area is to foster emerging technology. Again, as Bill said, we are on the cusp of something new within computing. It is not an old engineering discipline. It is very new and it's constantly evolving. And as you know, the world around us is evolving. So the Computer Society needs to maintain its edge in that space. And I think we are very much ahead. I mean, some of the examples over the past few years, even like the 2022 report and the dynamic technical communities that we build and reevaluate based on what is the heart of technology, like quantum computing or any emerging trends that might be happening. So we need to continue in that capacity, and that would be one area of focus, is making sure how do we keep our edge in that technical space. Third is our chapter activities. The chapters, I think, are really the bedrock of our direct member contact and can significantly influence both the membership aspect, but I think more importantly, the participation and engagement aspect. One of my first roles was Computer Society chair, chapter chair in Oklahoma City. I've been a regional coordinator, I've served on the board, all sorts of different levels of interaction. And as we deal with this new world around us, maybe we need to not only learn from the chapters that are successful, but are successful in the very near term. In the last 6 months, what have made those chapters successful? Have we dealt with the new world around us? So maybe rethinking a little bit about geographic boundaries. And is there really a box around how we've set up our chapters, and should there be, and what should that look like differently? And how do we leverage that would be a third area of focus. And finally, our volunteers. All of us here are volunteers, and we're impacting how the Computer Society looks outside of itself as well as inside of itself. And so thinking around making it relevant and accessible for all the life cycle of somebody's career is really going to be an interesting aspect. I think balancing work, balancing volunteering, balancing contribution, and then what does that mean for an individual as well as a society is an interesting space to think about. So I'd love to hear your ideas about this. I got an email the other day from Jean in Colorado sending me a list of like a whole bunch of questions just around what is the impact. And that kind of dialogue with volunteers is really exciting to me. So I like to certainly continue that and learn from it. So please reach out with your questions, ideas. I hope over the next few minutes we have an opportunity to discuss some of the different elements that Bill and I have both talked about. And let's think about these moments, because it's really not just the data that is important. Even in innovation, it's the intersection points and the intervals of time in between, and then the conversations that happen to be able to foster new ideas or ways to solve problems. And I would like to take this town hall, as well as your inputs over the next year and a couple years, hopefully, to think about how do we innovate the computer society.
Okay, thank you, Nita. Bill, do you have a, don't go on yet. Bill, you have a minute if you want to respond to anything that Nita just said.
I think all I'd like to say is again, thank everybody for joining us. I'm struck by the commonality in how we are looking at some of these issues, and the focus on our volunteers, the expertise that we have in the communities. So I think it's just really exciting. I think for the society that we've got two strong candidates looking to serve us. Thanks.
All right, thanks. So now we can go on. So we have the first of the two prepared questions, and then I see that one question has come in the Q&A, and I want to encourage other people to ask their questions there. But first, the question, and this will go to Nita first, is what's the best way to build membership? Particularly, what should the society do to make it more attractive to early and mid-career professionals? Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. As we move to the next slide, you'll see I'm a visual person, so you see a couple of images. You've probably seen this circle of why. Simon Sinek, who's a very prominent writer around leadership and leading within organizations, which is what IEEE Computer Society is as an organization, is this idea of starting with the why. And I think for different subsections of our population, the why is slightly different. And one thing I've struggled with, and I think that we could spend some quality time as a board and as volunteers within the organization, is think about what is the single thread that connects the why across these different groups, because there's clearly some value proposition there for students. We have a great number of students, but that missing piece of when they move from student to professional, we haven't quite identified. And I wonder if it's because we haven't really thought of the why of the professionals. And I understand, the whys as unique as each individual member times whatever number of whys they might have personally, but there's also some thread that we quite haven't really pulled on enough to understand to be able to carry the membership from student to early career through professional. There is this element of lifelong learning, there is this element of data, there is this element of networking and access to resources and like-minded individuals. But that's not really a why. Why would an individual come to the Computer Society for those? And I think one of the reasons I personally think why is because of the diversity and breadth and ease of access. Those three components of my why is one element, but I don't know that it's the only why, and I'm sure it's not. So thinking through that why and having a very dedicated, maybe ad hoc, to think through what is that why and the single thread that connects all the way across the different career elements and ladder for individuals will be one of the areas to focus on. But I would start with my why, which is the diversity, the access, and the network that you have within the Computer Society to draw on.
Okay, thank you, Nita. Bill? Are you muted?
Yeah, I was muted. So again, I'm struck by the commonality in how we're thinking of this, as I'd like to often step back when I'm asked one of these questions and ask, why am I asking the question? So what is the goal in building memberships? And then similar to sort of what is the why? What are the real problems? Why do we have a challenge for that? A lot of the discussions that we've had have come down to what is the value of being a member, and there'll be discussions about what products do we offer the members? Is it discounts for the conferences, for the digital library? And honestly, I think that those are misguided because they're asking the member, asking to think, what is it in it for the member? And I think that the real strength, the unique asset that the Computer Society has, again, is it the society. So that core value is belonging to a society of your peers, and reaping the benefits of being part of that society. So whether that's mentoring, fellowship, recognition, leadership, as Nita says, different ones of those are more relevant at different stages in your career. So one of the things we need to do is ensure that we're expressing that core value to our membership. So we need to work with the membership more and with the community to strengthen those core values and adapt them to our diverse community. And those might involve things like we could be encouraging the technical committees to have more activities along these lines at the conferences they sponsor. That's an easy place to help grow those sorts of connections, to build on that. Some of the conferences that I've been involved in have set up strong student programs. They've set up mentoring programs between seniors in the field and students. Having participated in one of those, I can say that it's a real blast. It's nothing like meeting with young students to see their excitement. You can sort of relive why you got so excited with this and help some more along with that. We can be doing more of that, and it doesn't require a lot of money. It doesn't even require a lot of time. It just requires some focus on remembering why we joined this society in the first place and how we can give back to it and help it move forward. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to the second question, and this will be for Bill first. During your term, how will you approach fiscal sustainability? And a reminder to the candidates, we allotted 2 minutes per person for the answers to questions, so we'll just try to keep on schedule. Thank you.
Will do. Okay. Next slide. So it's a real challenge. It's a really good question. The business models for professional societies are changing. Open access in particular fundamentally changes the publication model. But that is just one example. As I mentioned in my opening statement, people are just starting to look at what open access extended to conference proceedings is going to mean for those models. So for fiscal sustainability, anyone who's operated a large organization, and I'd say my day job, I'm operating an organization with a budget larger than the computer societies, we need to support the products in the core mission, and those are really our conferences and publications. So we need to make sure that those remain healthy in this changing environment. We do need to invest in future products while managing expenses. So we need to think carefully about what those might be, but those need to be things for which the Computer Society has a unique ability. We have to be careful not to invest in a product that everybody needs, but that someone else can provide better or more efficiently. We do need to be a leader in adapting to this changing environment. We need to be experimenting with different approaches so that we are best prepared to adapt. And we can build on some new opportunities. And so one of the things that this crisis has shown us is that we can build virtual and hybrid conferences that function effectively. They have additional benefits. One of the things we've seen from some of these is that we can broaden participation. We can be more inclusive. We can provide better ways to draw more people into one of the most valuable things that we have to offer to our community, which is the expertise and fellowship that we see in the conferences. So I think building fiscal sustainability around celebrating the fact that we are a society while carefully managing both the expenses and revenue and thinking about the future in this changing environment for the major products is the way that we'll maintain fiscal sustainability. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Nita?
Yes, thank you. So I looked at it as this very simple chart, impact and profitability. And I know profitability sometimes is a bad word, even though it's not a four-letter word. Sometimes in nonprofits, people think of it as a bad word. But if you think of all of our members and the people that we are wanting to reach as our shareholders, then profitability in this context makes a lot of sense. And I'd like you to think of it that way, because the more profit we have, in the sense of more access to reinvest or more access to provide dividends back to our membership and those that are our shareholders, that's what we want to be as a computer society, and that's how we continue to grow our impact. So when I was Women in Engineering chair, the first things I did there was to do a comprehensive business plan overview. And that took a bit of time. It took almost 9 months. However, it was very much worth the investment. And I would want to look at the Computer Society in a similar way. It doesn't have to be this exact graph, but something along these lines of our impact areas where we are able to make profit, in the sense of have not investing so much, but that we can reinvest in other areas, and look where our programs and processes fall. And another way to think about it is also how hard are some of these things. So the areas that are easy to decide are on those that are very impactful and very profitable, and that you can continue to invest and grow. And those that are not profitable and not impactful, figure out how you close those down or give them away or let somebody else handle them. We don't have to do everything as a computer society. And I think that's really an area I'd like to think about, is where do we focus? And if we define our thread of why and focus our programs and offerings and services around that, within each of our specialties, then we can make an impact on this graph. And I think focusing on the 3 areas of high impact, okay profitability, high impact, high profitability, and somewhat okay impact, but high profitability will get us there.
Okay, thank you. So now we'll go on to questions from the participants and questions that were proposed in advance by the election committee and over social media. I think that the next slide has a prepared question, which is actually the same as the one of the top voted questions. So the question that had been posed in the chat was, you have specific examples of how to change the IEEE CS business model to be successful in the COVID era. And I think that the question that's posed on the slide, which is what is the impact on CS and how do you see this changing, go hand in hand. So whichever parts of those you'd like to address, you have 2 minutes apiece, and we'll start with Nita.
Thanks, Fred. So definitely Bill touched on some of these, right? Hybrid virtual conferences and different ways to interact. One thing I think we need to keep in mind is what amount of engagement are we getting? And I think, the first blush, it's like, oh, wow, we had 50,000 people sign up to this virtual conference. Obviously, we have a huge amount of engagement and impact, but is that really true? And I think, how do we think of maybe the impacts and changes we've made because of COVID as our first step to reach out to our members? And then what do we do as our second, third, fourth step? So definitely continue looking at where can we have virtual board meetings, where can we leverage virtual conferences or hybrid events, maybe split events over time where some elements are virtual, some elements are in person, and make it a more of a longer duration type of event so that you have continued engagement. I think those are things we all have to come back and circle the wagon to say what worked, what didn't work, where was the impact, where was the profit, how is it going to continue forward, and really engage our members to the third, second, tier of engagement.
Okay, thanks. Bill?
Yeah, so I think I already mentioned this, and I agree with what Nita said. As we've been looking at particularly conferences, the hybrid and virtual models have had the the benefit that people who have not normally attended, whether they're in developing countries where the expenses are too high, or for places where the travel is too burdensome, or we've seen also greater gender diversity in attendance in some conferences. Again, I think it may be that a virtual environment is more friendly for some. So we do see those benefits, but we also see difficulties in maintaining the sort of serendipitous interactions that are so important for innovation, for developments, for developing those sorts of moments where you meet with somebody over lunch and talk about the paper that you just heard. One of the things that we've been seeing in conferences across the spectrum, not just in computer science, is that the talk is actually better often in the virtual because of the additional interactive and interaction technologies that join with it. But what's missing, just as Nita said, is that engagement afterwards. And so this is one of the reasons why I think we'll be going back to at least hybrid, but I think we will transform the experiences that we provide, even in in-person conferences, to build on what we've been learning about increasing engagement in these talks. And I think that we absolutely have to take advantage of and maintain these growth in the inclusivity and the diversity that we're seeing with these conferences. And so finding a way to do that while coming back and ensuring that we have the sorts of engagement that make conferences so important to our community, I think that will be one of the goals for the next couple of years. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to go to some of the questions in the Q&A area now. Of the ones that have the greatest number of votes, there are actually several that are actually almost all of them are tied with 2 votes at this point, which makes it, I guess I get to choose. So I think that one thing that I would like to see covered is there's a question from Randy here. Oh, and it just got bumped to the top as well. So the one that now has 3 votes, so I was going with it anyway. I'm hearing similar words of the past 20 years, but no detailed or substantive action and how to realize it in a collaborative manner. BLM and racial justice resonates in society today, yet the IEEE and IEEE CS was very, I think it means late, relative to the other entities, e.g. AAS, APS, ACM, etc., in communicating support. Is timely action prudent? And also says we will have more pandemics. What might you do to prepare and act? So I think that diversity and dealing with the pandemic are kind of 2 different questions. Let's start with the question about how the Computer Society can deal with diversity. So I think Bill is first.
Okay, so I'm really happy to see this question. And I think that it is focusing on the fact that we talk about this, but we haven't made a lot of progress. I have been working both in my regular job and in the Computer Society. We've set up committees on diversity inclusion. The TNC communities have issued a statement which has been adopted both by the Computer Society and more generally by IEEE. I think one of the things we need to do is we need to be quite public about our failings. One of the things that we should be doing, we're often very data driven. We should be collecting and publishing that data and being embarrassed about it. I think that will help because it will just remind us that we need to be doing more. One of the things that we see in society now is that there's a lot of innovation, a lot of ideas on how to address this, and we can be doing more of that. We can also be piloting different ideas. That's another strength that we have through our different technical communities and the societies and the chapters. So I think what I would do here first is to really make a real push to acquire the data, publish the data, be embarrassed by the data, and invite our volunteers to help us fix that problem. If you look at my website, you'll see one of the books that I recommend people read 2 books on my website. One of them is weapons of mass destruction, and the other is invisible women. Both of them are very data-driven, and depressing as they are to read, they both have quite positive messages about what we can do, and I would encourage people to look at those. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Nita?
Yeah, I agree with Bill about being data driven and looking at information and looking at how can we affect. I guess I understood the question slightly differently, and what might you do to prepare and act to things such as large scale public movements or a pandemic or something that essentially is a black swan, right? We didn't anticipate, it wasn't anywhere on our risk radar. It just sort of shows up and sort of puts everything into its tailspin. And similar to where the idea of the black swan came from, Nassim Taleb, he also has a book called Anti-Fragile. And I think what that meaning and essence of anti-fragility is to be resilient and adaptive and experimental. And Bill touched on this a little bit too, is if you can do that as an organization, you end up being able to react more quickly and more rapidly and more broadly. And so I would look at our risk assessments from a different perspective, is not how do we shore up or address, but how do we become a bit less impacted by them by becoming more anti-fragile.
Okay, thanks. So let's go to next question. What is the impact of open access on finances for IEEE Computer Society? And we'll start with Nita.
Thanks, Red. So there hasn't been, I would say, a huge impact yet. And I think some of it is because the IEEE Computer Society is still considered a leading publication in different areas, especially for our transactions. And because of our quality, our vetting process, what we bring as a brand to those elements, obviously today is different than 10, 15, 20 years as this becomes more and more embraced and widespread and adopted. So thinking through any other organization, you think as the market shifts and where you no longer are making financial positive numbers, you have to think, where is it that you add value? And one area that I think both Bill and I have talked about is where we can add value is the interpretation of some of the technical data and where it might be applicable across different spaces. So looking at that, and I think it is a very big question for the board to think about, what impact will it have long term, which is a little bit of playing the stock market kind of game, right? But you have to prepare by saying, as an organization, what do we do to shift where we're spending our resources so that it doesn't have as huge an impact? Thank you.
Okay, Bill.
So I like to echo a lot of those comments. So far, open access hasn't had a big impact, but it has a big potential to really change the model, not just for the publications, but for conference proceedings and even for conference attendance, and some of that is driven that way. And so, as Nita said, we need to be looking at preparing for the future for what this might look like. Just as an example, one question that we've been posing is, in an open access future, you've got the immature of saying that this journal article, this conference article was given a certificate, essentially a certificate of equality by being peer reviewed through processes managed by the Computer Society. That has real value. But how is that separate from where that document is stored? So does it make sense for us to have our own digital library, or do we have a different arrangement with, say, archive? That's actually pretty scary to be thinking about. But scary is what we need to be considering, because it might happen anyway. And so none of us have the answers to these questions, but I think what we need to be doing is being prepared for the changes in the future and thinking of it in terms of the global impact, not just inside the Computer Society. Another thing I want to mention with open access is that it does shift who pays for what. And for first world people, it doesn't really matter. We've got lots of money for research. It comes from one pot or the other. Not everybody is as lucky as that. And a real challenge particularly for the professional societies going forward, is thinking about, in an open access world, how do we ensure that all of our members across the world have the same kind of access to our publications as those from well-funded countries with generous granting agencies. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. I think we'll do one more question and then move to the closing statements. So I'd like, Steve, if you would jump to the last of the additional questions. That was actually that one. So I think that this is something that I saw, I'd like to hear your opinion of myself. Bill, you'll go first. How can the CS attract more members, and specifically from address people in industry?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I think that, again, this one goes to what we've both been talking about, which is talking about, well, why should somebody be a member? What should attract them? And again, I think that the value that we have here is the fact that we're a society. It's not that we provide a discount for the digital library. I know in interactions we have with our own industry program at NCSA, that one of the things that our industry members find really valuable is our annual meeting where they can get together and talk with each other in a sanctioned environment. And I think that, we can be looking at industry, communicating, talking with them to understand how best to provide the sort of opportunities for people to interact, to work together, to share, in order to make it valuable for industry, for the individual staff, but also for firms to belong as members. And so again, I think focusing on how we market ourselves as a society and the benefits of being a society will be critical for attracting more members from industry. Thanks.
Thanks. Anita?
Yeah, so not to get into semantics, but what does industry mean? Is, similar to Bill's question earlier, what does membership mean? What is the value of membership? It's a little bit of a similar idea. Is industry the individual who happens to work in an industry? Is industry a professor who happens to be doing collaborative research with somebody outside of the university setting? Is industry the entity of an organization like my company, L3? What is industry? And again, I think we got to find the common theme. And to me, the common theme is that for industry, whether it's the individual professional, it's advancing technology to either make an impact, and that impact could be make money, could be impact lives, could be all sorts of different definitions there too. And what does that need? Because the market is ever changing, the need for delivering quality is ever changing, but the idea of making an impact and developing technology innovation is not ever changing. And so how does the Computer Society provide that? What mechanisms, if that's our why, then you move to the what can you do? And then we can finally worry about how, at some future point. But I don't know that we've figured out the leap from that why. First, let's all agree, and maybe that takes a little bit of work. And then the second is the what elements of it need to happen.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Uh-oh. Frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Bill, I think you're up.
But I started, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Yep. Okay, so my bad. So I was wondering, right? I'm talking, nothing's happening. But the screen seemed frozen for a moment. I think I was having technical difficulties. Okay, so we'll move to the final comments. You each have 3 minutes plus 1 additional minute for any other commentary. I think you have slides prepared that Steve can flip to now. Okay, so Nita, you go first.
Yeah, Thanks for joining today and for the questions. It's very clear from just looking at the questions that people are very passionate and very thoughtful, and I think that's awesome to have that level of interaction and engagement in the society. As you can see from Bill and I's conversation today, there's a lot of common themes. You're not going to go wrong with either one. Obviously, I hope that you vote for me. I think, we will probably have different styles, and I'm sure we do, and we have slightly different ideas. And of course, all those things make an impact, but ultimately, the Computer Society will be in good hands either way. What I would say is that one area that I always find within the IEEE that any part of the IEEE has trouble with, and which I'd like to help, is focus and strategy. Focus and strategy comes by asking thoughtful questions, collecting relevant data, analyzing the data, prioritizing purpose, and focusing in the direction of the path you want to go. You may not know everything, and sometimes, and I've used this quote before, you have to take the leap and build your wings on the way down, and I certainly support that, and I think experimentation is essential. But I think you have to know where is it that you want to take the leap, and where do you ultimately want to end up from taking that leap, and figuring it out in between is all part of the process. So again, I think you won't go wrong voting for either one of us, but I certainly hope you'll vote for me.
Thanks. And Bill, it is your turn this time.
Yes. Well, I'd like to echo that. In listening to Nita's comments and hearing the questions that the community has asked, I feel that the Computer Society is in good hands either way. Of course, I hope you'll vote for me. And I think what I'd like to say is that I think that what I really want to focus on is building these communities. I want to leverage the frameworks that we have in the technical communities and the chapters to support our role in the profession. I think there's a lot that we have to build from. I think one of the things that we need to do a better job of, and that I would really work on, and I have been doing it in my role as the Vice President for Technical and Conference Activities, and would like to do more, is to build a more transparent and consultative culture for the membership. There's a little bit of too much top-down, and this is true for both the Computer Society, although current leadership has been pushing in this direction. I'm very happy to see that, but also at the IEEE level. And so I think that this is something that's really going to be important, and it comes from my focus on thinking of us first as a society and then deriving what it is we are and what we do from that. I'm really optimistic about the future of the Computer Society. We can talk about the current crisis, the threats to the business model from open access, the challenges in the membership, but as I look at the opportunities, both in computing and the Computer Society, I really am optimistic about where we can go. And so I think we really do have a bright future, and I hope I have your support in leading us forward for the 2022 year as president-elect next year, and past president the year after that. So I hope you have your support, and thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I want to thank Bill and Nita for a very spirited discussion here. I think it was very informative. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. As a reminder, this was recorded. The links for the discussion will be sent out to all the attendees for the next few days. The elections will start on Monday, August 3rd, and at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 21st. Another announcement, we have an upcoming webinar on August 2nd at 1 p.m. It will be on regulatory compliance to process improvement in healthcare, hosted by Carlos Enrique Cabral Duarte, one of our distinguished lecturers. And I want to thank everybody in attendance and to all the speakers. Hope you enjoy this and hope this enables your decision making. And thank you to the candidates for agreeing to participate. Have a good day.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Thank you all. Thank you, Nita.
Thank you.